Okay, welcome everyone to the August edition of the Golang Tools meeting. Thanks to everyone for joining. We're gonna go through the agenda from top to bottom. It looks like it's somewhat light, so we'll see how long this takes. If anyone is here and has something to discuss that's not on the agenda, please feel free to raise it. We'll try to make some room for that at the end. So volunteer running the call. That's me. I'm Rob. Nice to meet you. And the first agenda item is some meta discussion that I added when I saw yet again that the agenda was pretty light. I am wondering whether or not the pacing of this meeting is still correct. I know that we sometimes just skip summer months because everyone's busy, and so that's fine too. But should we formally make it like a quarterly meeting? Should we consider that, or should we just keep doing it, skipping meetings as needed? Do folks have any thoughts on this?
My only thought is that if we make it quarterly, we might lose some of the merge windows.
Yeah.
Or they might be timed slightly weirdly. So if we change the pacing to be like a few meetings a year, I think they should be lined up with the release window somehow. Maybe like start and end.
Yeah, so I was thinking that like today's meeting is obviously timely since the tree is opening up. And it's good for us to discuss things we want to land. And if we did it quarterly, we would meet, at the opening of the tree and the start of the freeze. It's almost actually probably better, now that I think of it, to meet monthly during the development cycle and then just take breaks during the freeze, which is kind of what we've been doing. So we can continue with the status quo. I just wanted to raise the point. If people are finding that this is too frequent, we can adjust. Okay. It sounds like continuing to skip meetings as it feels appropriate works for everyone. Okay, next, Dan said you add the Google Meet link directly to the wiki page. That's a great idea. Thank you. And proposal to add 1 hour reminder for this call as well. Yeah, it makes sense. Do you have the ability to do that, or do you need one of us to do it?
I have the ability. I think there's like 5 of us who can edit the calendar. The reason I bring this up is because we only have one reminder that's 10 minutes before. And because this call happens once a month or less, some people forget that it's happening. And then if you get a notification 10 minutes before, you might have to run to make it or not make it at all. So I think 1 hour before is better. The question is whether to have 2 reminders or just one at 1 hour. I don't have a strong opinion.
I also don't have a strong opinion, but feel like probably 1 reminder is sufficient.
Okay. The slightly annoying thing is that because it's a shared event, we have to set up the reminders equally for everybody that has the calendar added, apparently, unless they copy the event. So yeah, I think 1 reminder is probably best to not bother people. Yeah. I'll make that change.
Okay, thanks. So moving on, we have the Ide Editor tools section, which is currently empty. So we can skip this unless anyone has something to discuss. For my part, we're planning on doing Go Please and VS Code releases in the next week or so. They should be polished releases, primarily, nothing significant to discuss. Dan.
Yeah, one question, because I remember you mentioned a few weeks ago that you wanted people to test master of Go Please with their editors. Is there any place where you announce when there's like new features or experimental stuff that you want people to test? Because I haven't been using any stuff like that, for example.
Yeah, well, I usually do it in Slack. So I usually post to the Go Please Slack channel and the VS Code Slack channel. And by usually, I mean the last 2 times that we've had big things that I wanted people to test. I don't know how well that works. So we're trying to experiment with ways we can get more testing of our pre-releases and or master. I think it would be sufficient if we can just get more people testing the pre-releases when we cut them. So we're planning to cut a pre-release tomorrow. And the easiest way for the majority of our users to use the pre-release is to subscribe to the VS Code Go nightly extension rather than the non-nightly. I think we have some changes in the works to make that easier. Rather than have two different published extensions, we'll just have one, and you can change your configuration to subscribe to the nightly channel. So I think we're working on making it easier to use the nightly. But like, for example, the last major release that we did, the 0.9.0, had a ton of changes in it, and I was very nervous about shipping such a risky release without getting good test coverage. I mean, obviously internal testing, but like external testing. And so we cut a pre-release 3 weeks in advance, and I tried to push it heavily on Slack channels. And we didn't really get a lot of feedback from that. I mean, the release ended up being fine, but there was like a crasher for people who are running the Go Generate code lens. And immediately after we released, we got like 10 reports on the issue tracker. And fix that in the 9.1 release, but suggests to me that we're not getting that much coverage from the pre-releases. So anything we could do to amplify that coverage would be great. It also could be selection bias. Like the people who are using the pre-release are more sophisticated users because they're paying attention to Slack. And so generally don't run into the same types of like rough edges as a new user would.
Out of interest, which Slack channels were you using for notification? Because I follow very few Slack channels just because there's so much noise.
Well, for the last release, I discussed it in the Go Please Slack channel and the VS Code Slack channel.
Mm.
Do you have suggestions for different Slack channels I could use? There's tools, but like I think that's even more.
Announcements?
Maybe. That's kind of heavy, but we could consider it for sure.
Yeah, in the past, they've posted basically anything on announcements that's reasonable, like conferences and meetups, so I think they should be fine. And I think you're right that there's some bias with people who run master or pre-releases, because, for example, I run master, but my usage of Go Please is somewhat basic. I don't use any code lenses, for example, or any actions yet, even though I've been too lazy to set that up. So I cover only the main things, I think.
Yeah, I think probably the best thing we can do is try to incentivize people to get on the nightly releases. Incentivize them with, previews of features and, more promotion of the things we're doing. And so once we get people on the nightly channel, then we just get more coverage by virtue of that. But yeah, well, I mean, this next release is not nearly as risky, so I'm not quite so worried. But going forward, yeah, this is sort of a fundamental problem we want to solve. Okay, cool. Moving on, we have a bunch of stuff under Command Go. Bunch of stuff added by you, Dan. Do you want to? I'll introduce them. So the first one is Go Clean should not accept flags like mod cache with packages.
Yeah, this one is a slight UX sharp edge. I run Go Clean intending to clean the module cache for just one package, and I watched as the command was chugging along for a few seconds, and then I realized it was cleaning everything. So I think we should probably do this. It was just an FYI, in case anybody disagrees. And the proposal is that we shouldn't allow specifying a path if you use a flag like mod cache or cache, for example, because what it does right now is essentially ignore the path and just clean everything.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Since it's a command line change, we might want to run it through the proposal process. I don't expect there to be any major contention about it, but I think it probably couldn't hurt to run it through, and we've got plenty of time before anything could possibly land for the 120 window anyway.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also did a bit of searching of existing public code, and all the places I could find where this combination of arguments was given with the flag, all of them look like people just wanted to clear for one package. So all of them essentially look slightly wrong, depending on how you look at it. Okay, I'll turn it into a proposal just in case. The next one is a slight nit of the modules reference document, which is that back when we talked about workspaces, which is like over 2 years ago now, we had a bit of a debate on whether go.work file should be checked into Git. And I think we went back and forth on that. We changed our minds a couple of times, but we ended up not writing anything in the reference docs about whether or not they should be checked in. So I think we probably should. Because I found that people have opinions on it and they're conflicting. Some people say never check it in. Other people say sometimes check it in. So we should probably clarify that.
I think the fact that people have differing opinions on it suggests that we should not document a consensus because there isn't a consensus. Or at the very least, I think if we're going to document a particular consensus, we need to figure out what that consensus is first, which also sounds to me like the proposal process.
That is fair. Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking is that if we document anything, it should be that in general they shouldn't be checked in, but in some cases, and then maybe give a couple of examples, it can make sense. Something vague like that.
I think it probably does make sense to describe conditions where it would have a useful effect and conditions where it would have a counterproductive effect.
Yeah, I think my main worry is that when people say it should never be checked in, I think that's wrong because, for example, for monorepos, it makes sense, right? So, okay. Another proposal, yay.
And the next one is a proposal as well.
This one is not mine, but I added it to the list because it's, again, something we've talked about before, which is when you use commands like go test JSON or go list JSON, they emit structures. And right now, those structures are documented, as in the types. But if you want to use them, you have to copy paste them. So I think it would be nice to expose them as an API somewhere. And I don't think we ever filed an issue about this, even though we talked about it.
Yeah, I think there should probably be definitions for these structs somewhere. I don't know if they belong in xtools or in the standard library in some subpackage of Go or maybe a subpackage of command Go. I don't know. I think the interesting question here is mainly where should these common definitions live? Because I agree that it would be useful to have them.
Are they the definitions, are they covered by the backwards compatibility guarantee? Because if not, then they shouldn't be in the standard library, I think.
They're in kind of a gray area because they are listed in the documentation, but the command line tools are explicitly not subject to the Go1 compatibility policy. And so like they're documented and it's very unlikely that we would ever remove a field that's already there. But on the other hand, they aren't technically covered by the compatibility policy right now, which I think probably makes them a pretty good fit for xtools, because xtools is in a similar gray area where it's like, we can't change it or we'll break things, but it's not technically covered by the compatibility policy.
Yeah, I'm willing to bet that we could change the format as long as the JSON doesn't change, as long as the JSON is still compatible, right?
I think we could change the format as long as the JSON still marshals into the same structs. Yeah.
Right. So then I would say it shouldn't be in the standard library because those things would break the Go API, technically.
I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean that if you can change a Go type so that it still marshals and unmarshals the same way in JSON, it could still break some other Go code that uses it, right? So that could be seen as a breaking change as a Go API.
I sort of see what you mean there, yeah.
But anyway,
I don't know.
Another reason why I brought this up is because there are some other bits of command Go that I've wanted in the past, like how command Go quotes strings for things like LD flags and GC flags. I copy that code right now. So maybe we should have an xtools, I don't know, command go package that has the definitions, but also little utilities for interfacing with command go, like the quoting and unquoting of strings, because it is not standard quoting in any sense.
It isn't. I would kind of rather us move to some kind of standard quoting, but I hesitate to provide an API for the behavior that we have now, because I think the behavior that we have now is probably still a little bit wrong. But
Okay.
I don't know. I could probably be convinced either way on that.
Yeah, but I think the only thing to keep in mind is maybe if we add a package, it should be a generic enough name so that it's not just go types or command go types.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? Cool. So I have one last one, Pinky Promise. It's just a one about adding a documentation page for reproducible bills. This is forked from a different thread where somebody was asking about a reproducible flag. And the answer is, well, Go does have reproducible bills, but you have to do X, Y, and Z. And you have to like be careful about a number of things. But those things are not very well documented anywhere. And also they keep changing from time to time. Not very often, but sometimes. And there's also developments like the stamping of build info, which helps with reproducible builds. So I think it would be useful to have a page for this. The one possible answer is write a wiki page, which is something that has been said before about adding more docs, but I'm reluctant to write this canonical info in wiki pages. So the question is, does anybody know if there's a protocol these days for adding another documentation page under, I don't know, the website? Or maybe command go? I don't know.
I don't think that we have a regularized process right now. We don't have a tech writer on staff right now that I'm aware of. I would say, let's see. I think we could probably add a section to the command go help text, although I'm trying to kind of push us away from adding stuff to that and toward putting stuff on the regular website. I don't know where on the website that would go.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot because I know you're not the technical writer. So maybe what I'll say is I'm happy to help write this as soon as there's a spot for it and somebody can approve the changes. And I'll just leave it there for now.
Sounds good. I will add it to my list of things to talk with Russ about, and I will talk with Russ about what process we should follow for this issue.
There's another issue that's quite similar, which is for CI best practices. And it's also been sitting there for a while. I'm also happy to do that if there's a spot for it.
Cool. Thanks, Dan. So moving on, the next item is Brian's. Planning to add LFS support for 120.
Just a heads up, if anyone cares about Get LFS support. We're planning to treat it as a completely separate protocol, so Git and Get LFS will be two separate things that you can configure your Go import directives to point to. If you want to use LFS with GitHub, you'll have to add a .git-lfs suffix to your import path.
I think there are some people who care a lot about LFS support, but maybe not in this room. Cool. That's basically it for the agenda. Anything else anyone wants to discuss? Dan could use Git LFS, he says. Anything people want to share about what they're working on going forward as part of the development cycle or otherwise?
for 120, just as an FYI, I've got a few CLs to make Go Printer a little bit faster because it allocates like crazy right now. So if anybody's
Right.
interested in the performance of Go Printer, let me know. Happy to coordinate.
We may care. I recently was profiling Go Please and discovered some performance regressions in Go types that we want to fix in 120 as well. And yeah, we're definitely sensitive to the performance of Go Printer. Cool. All right. Does anyone want to volunteer for running the next session? Which would be the September edition. And following our conventions, it would normally be a non-Googler.
I'm happy to do it. How about like middle of September, since the agendas are a bit light? The 14th, the 21st. Are either of them holidays or anything in the US?
Don't believe so, but I'm checking. The 14th is not, the 21st is not. Either one, I think, would be fine.
Okay, I'm going to choose the 21st just to give the agenda some space to grow.
I think the 21st would be better. The 14th, I think a lot of the Go team is going to be busy with some meetings.
Gotcha.
Good call.
Also, is a quiet week coming? Because we might want to avoid that as well.
I have a suspicion that the week, including the 14th, will probably be a quiet week.
Okay. 21st it is. Thank you.
Great. All right. I think we're done. Nice to see everyone. Hi, Carmen. All right, bye.
Bye.